Hi, Neil Marshall.
Oh,
Nice to meet you and welcome on our podcast Parlons Arts. That's the second time you come here for the PIFFF festival. The first time was in 2022 for the Lair. Do you feel a special atmosphere here in this festival with the French crowd?
I definitely do. I sense a real passion for the genre. Everybody's so friendly. There's just a real love for this festival and for the films that screen there. It's a really nice crowd. It's an amazing cinema. It's a good place.
I would like to start with Dog Soldier because that was a superb discovery for me, but it's very confidential in France, I think. How do you explain its success in Great Britain and America?
To be honest, I can't explain its success in America. I made it very much for a British audience.
Oh yeah.
But maybe that's the point. Is like, you people tell you to write about what you know and what you love or whatever and make it from something from your heart. And that's what I did. I made a film for an audience that I knew and understood, which was people just like me. And it's full of, regional accents and things like that and language from the UK. And I didn't really consider that it might work in the US at all. And yet somehow, it clicked. People enjoyed learning some of the language that gets used.
The accents,
Yeah, the accents and things like that. Nobody required subtitles or anything, so it's not too bad. But yeah, that was fascinating to me.
And for our first feature, that was, I think, really ambitious, like your script. How it was to produce this type of script?
Well, that's what everybody told me. They said, this is way too ambitious for a first-time feature. I mean, trying to do a werewolf film for a first-time feature was, so many people said, do something smaller, do a little, simpler. Okay. And no, I wasn't going to do that. I was like, no, this is the one, and I believe that I can do it. And when we managed to put together just the perfect team to pull it off. I don't know. I believed in dreaming big. If ambition isn't a crime, it's go for it.
Yeah, maybe it's your first and last first feature film, so you have to put all your...
That's the thing, you don't know if you might only ever get to make one film in your life. You better make the one that you want to make. So I did, and I was aware that I had some limitations. There was things I simply couldn't do, I knew we weren't going to have enough time and money to do a beautiful transformation sequence. I was so inspired by films like The Howling and American Werewolf, but I knew I couldn't beat their transformations, and I didn't want to go down the CG route because, well, even now I don't think CG has done a great transformation. The practical effects still work best. Okay. So I just thought, don't take them on at that game, don't play that game, go a completely different route. So actually I was inspired by another British film called Carry On Screaming, in which the characters hide behind the furniture and turn into werewolves or turn into whatever it is they turn into. And I just thought, that's hilarious, so I'll do that instead.
Let's talk about The Descent, because the movie has almost 20 years. How is you looking back this production in your career, and especially, do you see today an influence of a new wave of young directors about this film?
Well, certainly, it's amazing that 20 years after I made it, people, I'm still sitting here talking about it, or it's still being screened at festivals in Paris and such like. It's amazing. And I feel so privileged about that. And I've certainly seen over the last 20 years in various films, the influence of The Descent. I think one of the more obvious ones was I was watching Cloverfield.
Oh, yeah.
And there's a sequence in Cloverfield with an infrared camera and it points at somebody and there's a creature in the background. I was like, yeah, that's the, and since I know that J.J. Abrams is a Descent fan, I was like, well, I know where that came from. Imitation is the highest form of flattery. Then it's like, okay, I'll take that. That's lovely that it had that much of an impact. There's one way in which it hasn't really been imitated, and I find it a little bit disappointing. It still remains one of the only kind of genre action horror films with an all-female cast.
Oh yeah, okay, of course.
And we were well ahead of the curve with that. And yet it's still kind of unique. Which is kind of crazy.
The photography is amazing. How difficult was the challenge to create a dark environment with your DOP Sam McCurdy?
Well, it was always the plan. I mean, we talked about this a year, 2 years before we even made it. We were discussing this is how it has to be lit. That we want to make an authentic caving movie, which is no beautiful shafts of light coming from, we're not out to make the caves look pretty. The caves are dark and grungy and horrible, and when you turn out the light, there's nothing. And so the only lights that we're going to have is what the characters take with them. That's the plan. And so I had to write that into the script. I had to make sure that each character had something with them,
some light, or
that we would be able to see them in the scene.
Okay.
Be it a camcorder or a box of matches or a flare or whatever it might be. And then this also enabled each of the characters to almost be color coded. So if it was green lights, you kind of knew it was Rebecca and Sam, and if it was fire, you knew it was Sarah. And so we got a sense of like that's an easy reference in the darkness that you'll know who we're with immediately because of the colors of the light. Not that we really needed that, but we filmed it in such a way on set when we were filming it. It was a little bit brighter than what you see in the film. And then once we got it into the grade, we just brought it right down and crushed those blacks to make it super dark, to give us the effect that we're after.
You did the choice to just show the first creature after 50 minutes. That's very long, but I think it's worked very well. What was your motivation behind this choice to show less to the spectator?
I like a film that builds, and it's not because it's not like the film doesn't come alive until the creatures show up. It's like a lot of people find the first half scarier than the second half because it's about the claustrophobia and all that kind of stuff. So I wanted to create a journey whereby things start to go wrong. I mean, it starts out with like lies and cheating and all that kind of stuff that's going on, and and then it ends up with somebody breaks their leg, or the rocks collapse. Tunnel collapses, they get stuck in the cave, and then someone breaks their leg, and it's like it's just getting worse and worse and worse. And just when you think it can't get any worse, then we bring in the creatures. And it was that idea of like making that last 40 minutes of the film like so intense, and everything goes horribly wrong, and it gets really violent, and so it just changes. Yeah.
I have a question about the poster of the Descent. It forms skulls with all the cast. What is the story behind this poster?
Well, so that was actually the American poster, and kind of keeping in mind that it wasn't released in the US until a year after it came out in the UK. And the story behind that is that when we were making the film, there hadn't been a cave horror movie come out for years, and suddenly we're making our film and we hear that there's another film being made called The Cave over in Romania, which had a much bigger budget than we did and had like stars in it and stuff like that. We were like, oh no, it's like typical. But we were in an opportunity in the UK. We were like, okay, let's get it in cinemas before The Cave comes out. So we like raced through it. We shot The Descent in January. We had it in cinemas in July. I mean, like that turnaround is nuts, specifically these days. But then it was like, okay, we just boom, boom, boom. We just did it. So Lionsgate had it in the US. They said, no, we're actually gonna wait until after The Cave comes out and like give it 6 months or whatever until after. So they did that, and they played it at Sundance and released it. I can't remember, shortly after Sundance in the US. They came up with their own campaign, and that's the poster that they came up with, and it ties in with Silence of the Lambs. And the poster of that has the same, that it's Dali, is it? Yeah. So it's I mean, it was a beautiful piece of work that they came up with, and weirdly that became the more iconic poster than the British one. But I don't mind. They're both fantastic.
About Centurion, the movie looked like a survival in antiquity, and less like a classical peplum. What motivates that choice? Do you have a preference for the genre of survival?
Yes. I love survival movies, but in a way, if Dog Soldiers was inspired by films like Zulu and Assault on Precinct 13, so Dog Soldiers was inspired by a whole bunch of genre. Centurion was inspired by things like Western movies. It was like The Warriors, Walter Hill's The Warriors, Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. The bit where they're being chased by the horses and stuff like that. I filmed it like a Western, but the survival thing is just a huge thing with me. I love it.
I come back to Dog Soldier. Southern Comfort by Walter Hill inspire you?
Walter Hill is one of my favorite directors. So any number of John Carpenter, Walter Hill. I grew up with these guys. I love their movies. So yeah, Southern Comfort. Soldiers in Trouble. They're all in there.
And the casting of Centurion is very audacious. You have some veterans like Liam Cunningham, Dominic West, and new stars like Michael Fassbender, Riz Ahmed, Olga Kurylenko. How was the process to compose the casting of the film?
We got a great casting director on board. I think I wanted to work with Liam again anyway, because I just love working with Liam Cunningham. He's fantastic.
Yeah.
So I wanted to get him in there, and then it was a case of like we just our casting director said, what about this person? What about that person? And for Michael Fassbender, I'd almost put him in Doomsday. I'd met him, and he was almost in Doomsday. And then the producer of Centurion had put him in Eden Lake before then, and said, I can't remember what it was, but I think like he'd been in Eden Lake as the lead, but he hadn't been paid very much. So the producer said, well, we owe you a bit of a payday. And I wanted him for Centurion, and so he got a nice paycheck out of that. Dominic West, and was somebody I just loved. I thought he was fantastic. Olga, I think there was a couple of choices we went to. Like I think we spoke to Eva Green or something, but Olga just came to that with such passion and energy for that role. I mean, she was desperate to speak, but I wouldn't let her. But I think she gave a fantastic performance. And people like Riz Ahmed, he was mainly known for his music at the time, so we gave him one of his first acting roles, and he's phenomenal. And obviously he's proved his mettle since then, but. And a lot of the other cast is just great people.
About Game of Thrones, you direct the 2 most memorable episodes of this, Blackwater and The Watchers of the Wall. I read that the showrunners contact you just a few days before the shooting. How was the feeling to participate to this huge production?
Oh, I loved it. I have this thing, for me, the bigger stuff, the better. That doesn't scare me. I like big scale stuff.
Like in Centurion?
Or whatever. The bigger scale, the better. Doomsday, give me all the toys, give me thousands of extras. I love all that stuff. A lot of the crew from Centurion, particularly the stunt team, ended up working on Game of Thrones. And they got into season 2, and they knew they had to deliver a big battle sequence in season 2. So they wrote this, Battle of Blackwater. And I think it was like a couple of weeks before they were due to start filming it, their original director dropped out. I don't know who it was, and I don't know why he dropped out, but I got a phone call on a Saturday morning out of the blue from the producer on Game of Thrones saying that the stunt team had basically given them my number and showed them Centurion and said, you want somebody who can do a battle, give Neil a call. I'm so grateful that they did that. Amazing people. So they gave me a call and said, do you want to come and do an episode of Game of Thrones? And I said, absolutely. When is it? Next month? And they were like, no, you start work on Monday morning, and we start shooting in a week, and it's the biggest episode we've ever done. And I was like, okay, I've got a week's prep. Fine. And I just kind of launched myself into it. So, I got that phone call on Saturday. Monday morning, I was in Belfast doing prep, and we started filming in a week later, and we got everything ready. It was a mad week, but we did it all.
You've done Doomsday, Centurion, episode of Game of Thrones. Is that still complicated to work with a massive team of actor, technician, or you love it?
I love it. I thrive on that kind of stuff. It's a very different thing when you go into a TV show, though. It's like it's not your baby. It's somebody else's baby, and it's not something that you live and you eat and you breathe and you sleep it like you do when it's your own feature. You go in, you do the best job possible, but it's somebody else's at the end of the day, and you defer to that. So you kind of park your ego at the door and you go and you do the best job you possibly can. And I like that. There's something freeing about it, because it's like you're just focusing on the direction. So yeah, it's a great experience.
And one last question, because I'm a bit curious. What is your favorite film this year? Do you have a favorite film?
This year?
Yeah.
Oh, Lord. Well, I saw Nosferatu last week.
Oh, Nosferatu is not in France.
Okay. I was lucky enough to go to an early screening of it, and met the director, and beautiful. Okay. Absolutely beautiful. Really enjoyed that. I would highly recommend it. Okay. It's a wonderful slice of darkness. It really is.
Thank you, Neil Marshall. It was a pleasure for us to have you in our podcast, and hope you enjoy the rest of your time in Paris.
I will do. Thank you very much.
Thank you.